Well, good morning. I'd like to pay remembrance to Al Drover, who passed away on January 5th of this year. I feel it's almost impossible to do justice to such a great man, but I'll do my best. I looked up to Al in so many ways, and I treasured his friendship. Al had been an integral part of our UUSG annual Veterans Service since its inception. He gave heartfelt and insightful talks over many years, and it's sad to do the vet service this year without him. Al was drafted into the Army in 1952. He was stationed at Fort Sill, located 85 miles southwest of Oklahoma City, where he served his 2-year commitment. Coincidentally, Peter Cove, sitting right there in the second pew, the founder of our veterans group, was stationed there at the same time. Now, we all know Al is a man with a good sense of humor. Here he is on the left modeling the latest in Army fatigue wear. Stylish looking gentleman, I might say. His daughter Jenny relayed to me that every morning when the commander came in to brief the troops, that Al would be drawing and sketching out the details of what was going to go on that day. Soon the commander noticed this, and he enlisted Al's help to do this every single day because it helped the troops visualize what was going to go on. And so that became one of Al's primary roles. Al also gave haircuts to the troops. Therefore, he thought, well, he was qualified to cut his daughter's hair. He had 4 daughters, and all 4 of those daughters received, as she described it to me, 1 or 2 haircuts. It didn't last real long. While they loved their dad, they didn't like the quasi-military kind of funny banks thing. Wasn't going to work. Now, the Drover family was truly one of military service. Next slide. In this picture, Al's picture on the top left, and his older siblings, Richard, Bennett, and Ruth, were in the Navy, and they all served during World War II. Al was too young at the time to serve, but he provided us with many interesting stories related to the war. I remember Al's description of the service flag displayed in the window of his childhood home. It's similar to the one on the picture here that I found on the internet. The flag had 3 blue stars on it, each representing one of the siblings that is serving overseas in the military. And this was a very common practice during World War II. If a family member did receive, however, the dreaded telegram with the news of a family member's death, they would replace the blue star with a gold star, revealing the family's sacrifice. Fortunately for Al's family, all of his siblings returned safely home. Al loved planes and military aircraft. He attended many air shows here in Chicago, at DuPage Field, and at Oshkosh. A friend of Al's gave him this World War II type bomber jacket. Speaking of World War II, again, interesting story his daughter relayed to me was that Al and his brother Richard, who was in the Navy, came up with a plan to secretly let Al know where he was at. Because he was on a ship overseas, and you can't, of course, we're not able to mention in any letter anything that will identify your whereabouts. So they developed a coded plan, something like where Richard would drop in the letter. He would say, if I say something about the weather, that means I'm in the Northeast, or whatever code they came up with. And I think this illustrates more of Al's creativity. The Ageless Dreams Foundation is an organization dedicated to honoring seniors and military veterans. Al got to go on one of their flights out of DuPage Airport. He's pictured here in the front seat of a Stearman. I think he looks right at home in that open cockpit airplane. Al paid me a very high honor. One time, a few years back, I had given a talk at the vet service on World War I air ace Eddie Rickenbacker. Unbeknownst to me, Al was a fan of Rickenbacker, and he had found a rare book about him in a bookstore in California. Rickenbacker, who was the CEO at the time of Eastern Airlines, had signed the book and as a gift to the vice president of Eastern Airlines at the time. Now, Al took the book and took some of the pictures, the signature and everything, and made a collage, which is what you're looking at, and framed that very nicely. Now, when Al moved to his new, smaller place, he gave me this collage. And he said, I wanted you to have it, because I know both of us have such high regard for Captain Rickenbacker. So I probably displayed that in my home for many years, but I decided that, well, I need to share this. So I called the Air Classics Museum in Sugar Grove, and they were excited to have the piece. Also displayed with it is a letter that Al wrote to the Air Museum, giving an explanation of the collage. I thought Al's last sentence in the letter about Captain Rickenbacker was powerful. He said, "The man and his life are more than the World War I ace we can recognize. He was almost superhuman." I urge you all to visit the Air Classics Museum in Sugar Grove to see Al's collage and letter. After the military, Al and Ann moved from Oklahoma to San Francisco, California, where they lived for many years. In 1977, they moved here to Chicago, and Al attended the Art Institute of Chicago. He took some classes, and he taught some classes as well. Following that, he worked for Fireman's Fund Insurance, and soon after that, he worked for Blue Cross and Blue Shield in their corporate accounts for many, many years. In this role, he traveled quite a bit. In retirement, he got a job in Geneva, driving for a dental lab. He really enjoyed running into labs and getting what he had to pick up and talking to people and spending some time and then moving on to the next place. And I know we can all picture Al doing that, his friendly, loving attitude. You know, I visualize that. Al started coming to this church 40 years ago, right around the time Rev Lindsey Bates arrived. When I asked Lindsay, I asked her what was her memory of Al, and she said, and I'll quote her, "Al was a good, tactful, honest advisor, and I always found his advice helpful. He supported my ministry during some challenging times, and you could always count on him to come through in a pinch," end quote. Christine stated the following in a churchwide memo this year. She said, "Having signed our membership book over 40 years ago, Al was a pillar of the UUSG community. Through his active involvement on the board and various committees such as LRE, Worship, WOW, and Heritage, Al played an instrumental role in the growth of UUSG from a small, struggling congregation to the vibrant community we have become." In the early 2000s, the membership team asked Al to do a presentation regarding the history of our ministers for one of the new UU sessions. Al not only prepared a talk about the ministers, but he drew a picture of each of the ministers from Augustus Conan to Lindsay. Now he mounted the pictures on cardboard and little sticks. As you see here, his presentation was so well received that he did this talk for many, many new member sessions. It was called Ministers on a Stick. Here's another example of Al's artistry and creativity. He gave me this present on my 60th birthday. He took an old Bobby Vinton record album cover, and the album's still in it. And he drew a picture of me over, which and included a humorous note, of course. And I feel Al would, one of the many ways that Al would show his love and caring for people, and this was certainly one of those. Speaking of humor, one of Al's most distinctive traits we know was his sense of humor. We all know this. And he wasn't shy at all, no, and he had no problem dressing up in unusual and comical clothing. Here's a picture of Al in the common room, dressed up as a bag lady. He's promoting the use of reusable bags, of course. If you've ever been to a UUSG auction, you have seen Al in action. He was good on his feet, and so he made the perfect auctioneer, full of joy, funny comments throughout the auction. I feel so fortunate to have been his sidekick for so many auctions. Pictured here was the Hawaiian-themed auction. Jenny, his daughter, commented, there always needs to be somebody with a personality like Al's to stir things up a bit or to make it light when it needs to be light. And the church was a nice outlet for his humor. After my first few years here at UUSG, Nancy Russo, which I know many of you will remember Nancy, a former member of our church, she paid me a huge compliment when she said, "Tracey, I think maybe you're the next generation of Al Drover." And trust me, I could never be half the man Al Drover is, but I do aspire to be like him in so many ways. Al and Ann were an inseparable couple. Their relationship was incredible, and they did almost everything together. Their daughter's fondest memories of Al and Ann are them sitting together every morning after breakfast for a couple hours, just talking. It was their time to discuss things they read or share funny stories and talk about the kids. Jenny said that my mom could laugh all day about the same thing Dad said because she was always laughing about what he said. And she said, "Why wouldn't you want an audience for all your life?" Right? I kind of agree with that, certainly. Al and Ann had 4 daughters. From youngest to oldest, they are Jenny, who lives in Phoenix, Beth, who lives in Algonquin, Janet, who lives in New Mexico, and Lynn, who lives in Boston. As a family, they went on a lot of trips. They'd go to national parks, and they would go camping and go on driving trips. Al was always up for anything. His attitude was, "Sure, let's go." Here's a more recent photo of their extended family. From left to right is Lynn with her husband Bob, Janet, Al and Ann and Al, Jenny and her husband Graham, and Beth and her husband Jerry. This next picture is of Jenny and Graham on their wedding day. I had a great conversation with Jenny, and I asked her, how would Al want to be remembered? She said he was extremely well read. He enjoyed reading history and current news as well as art history. He was warm, extremely thoughtful, very observant, and a good listener. He retained what you said, and then he would follow up. He was a great advisor to us and so many others. Whether it was work or finance or relationships, I always felt he offered good counsel. When we changed careers or got promoted, he was always good at helping us and the family move up or make the right choices. He also stayed healthy. You could find him on the treadmill every night. Al is what I call the perfect gentleman in all aspects of the word. He was thoughtful, he was kind, he was a good leader, and he gave so much of himself to others, especially to all of us here at UUSG. I sincerely miss Al, and I find it very hard to believe that he's not here with us right now. Thank you, Al, for bringing your wonderful spirit to all of us. You will always be in our hearts. We love you, Al.